do continue the conversation. We are getting into Mr. Auka Gesheo's conversation in just a bit. He will be taking us through football and finances in East Africa. Of course, Mr. Gesheo, an expert in a wide range of matters, sport, not just football. We're talking about a former Kenya rugby player. His injury was cut, or rather his career was cut short by injury. That's another thing we need to discuss, that transition from player into administrator, player into expert, player into the next step of your career. And I'm sure Mr. Gesheo will be taking us through that shortly on that virtual link. And there he goes. Our tech team is currently setting that up. Do prepare your questions, ladies and gentlemen. This is a conversation we'll be getting into about football and finances in East Africa. Mr. Gesheo, thanks a lot for your time again. Let us know how you're doing this morning before you get into your presentation.
I'm good. Thanks for asking. I'm okay. I'm sorry I couldn't join you. Times have changed nowadays, so I'm a bit under isolation. So I'll jump right in. It's 18 slides. I hope I won't be long and boring. I was asked to speak about financing in sports, and in my experience, we can't talk about effective financing without talking about sports market. So I quickly tried to look at this too. A quick definition of sports marketing, which is really building a highly identifiable fan base, such that fans, sponsors, media, government, key stakeholders support and promote sports societies that we are in. And how do we do that? Because then if we are looking at how to finance and how to commercialize and get our sports going, we definitely have to then look at who are our key stakeholders, where do we get these finances from, and how do we do it? And then the next question to ask, of course, is who are the consumers of? And there's various consumers of play, people who officiate, people who watch sports, people who buy sport-related merchandise, sports goods. All these are stakeholders in the game. I think the key thing, again, when we are our various federations, is to then be able to draw the line between a sports purist and a sports fan. I normally give the example of cricket and rugby, where this distinction is very clear. People who watch Test cricket go to the stadium for 5 days, go to the oval for 5 days, follow a team, understand every nuance of Test cricket. That's a sports purist. People who watch T20 cricket for the fun, for the razzmatazz, for the big six hits, those are sports fans. And it is very important for us as people in sports to be able to draw this line. And you'll see why as we go on. So from a marketing perspective, when we talk about the 4 Ps of marketing, again, we need to look at what products are we. Most of our federation will roughly be segmented into 2. There's elite sport, which is the premier sport, which is what attracts our fans and sponsors and television, which has our star players, and which is where we generate our income and revenue from. Then there's the development. The development builds into what the elite sport is. This is where the custodian of the sport sits. It's about nurturing, creating future stars, and like I've noted, this ensures the sustenance of elite sports, ensures the sustenance of national team. And the difference here is that at development level, you consume the income. So you generate income at elite sport, and you consume the income at development level. and it's always a fine balance to then ask, how do you get this right? So again, from a product perspective, I've given a comparison here between the French rugby league uh, and the New Zealand rugby league. So while the French league is very competitive, has fantastic attendance, it's a rich league, attracts big star players, and is a league that is really up there in terms of income generation and financing. At national team level, the French national team struggles. Struggle in what terms? Of course, they are a top 10 rugby playing nation, but they've not had the success. They've not won a World Cup, for example. They've not had the successes that other national teams have had. When you look at their leagues and how their leagues are attractive and how everyone wants to play in the French league, it's the most well-paying and lucrative. You expect that maybe they should have something, a World Cup or two to show for that. You look at the New Zealand league, which struggles to retain star players. The New Zealanders are always creating star players. They always lose their big players to the money in France and Japan. Their attendance, New Zealand is a country of 4 million people, so their in-stadium attendance, maybe not the best. Of course, when you factor in issues like their weather, the cold biting weather in New Zealand, and it's one of the countries where, taking in mind that the sport is a winter sport. However, all their key players are contracted to the national team, and everything they do is towards the national team, and is one of the most successful, not just rugby team, but sports team in the world in terms of a winning ratio. Again, if you look at the Barclays Premier League compared to the German Bundesliga, in terms of a product offering, the Premier League has positioned itself as the most recognizable football league, has all global stars, huge global interest, fantastic marketing. That's one of their biggest compared to the German Bundesliga, which has the best match attendance statistics across all teams, I believe. Very technically sound league, huge emphasis on homegrown players and youth development, and targets producing national team players. And of course, when we go to the national team level, the difference between the two offerings in England football and German football is clear for all of us. Then if you look at the place, are our consumers satisfied? We have an appeal across different demographies and geographical settings. If you look again at the comparison, Brazil national team is a global brand. When they tour, they make a lot of money from those tourings. Same to the NBA All-Stars. We are now seeing New Zealand taking their rugby to North America. Again, to ask why are they doing this? And this is purely a financial and commercial a reason. I like giving the example of the Olympics inclusion into, of the rugby inclusion into the Olympics. The 4 teams that met in the semi-final of the 2009 World Cup in Dubai, which was the year prior to rugby being accepted into the Olympic movement, were Wales, Argentina, Samoa, and Kenya. Traditionally not considered your big rugby playing nations. But what this did in terms of convincing the Olympic movement is that the game is spread across the world, and it is not just a game that is restricted to your so-called big rugby playing nations. If you look at these 4 teams, and this played a very significant role in terms of then convincing the Olympic movement that from a place perspective, the game is in all 4 corners. We need to also look at where we command a following, yeah. And I hope by the time I'll be wrapping this up together. And development is not just about geographical growth. Growth has to be systematic. A lot of times we talk about growth in terms of increasing numbers in a competition, in terms of increasing the number of teams playing in a tournament, which, yes, the numbers have increased. But if you look, for example, at Argentina's inclusions into what used to be the Tri-Nations, which is now the Rugby Championship, it was a very systematic process that took quite a number of years, from World Rugby going back to Argentina and saying, do you have leagues? No, we have no leagues. Then developing the leagues there, developing the kind of players, getting those players to go and play abroad, a lot of them in Europe, in France, in countries like Georgia, and then coming back home and systematically building a team that last weekend beat the New Zealand All Blacks for the first time ever. So it's been, a lot of us look at development as just geographical growth and growth of numbers, but we do not look at the systematic growth of the aspects of the game in places where we are looking to grow the game. And this is the same. If you look at how IPL franchises in India cricket, how they go about increasing the number of teams or giving a franchise out to an area. It's a very systematic process. There's key issues that need to be addressed, and primarily these are financial and commercial issues. There has to be support infrastructure. We have to be able to attract and retain supporters and resources, proper coaching. What sports offers is what I've talked about: elite, technical, great entertainment on the pitch. And if coaching is not proper and we are not focusing on elite performance, then we have no product to offer, and we have to start from there. A lot of times, and I personally have also been a culprit of this, when federations are asked to bring their budget for consideration, what we do is we go and write air ticket X amount, accommodation X amount, blah, blah, blah. And that is what we take to sponsors and say, this is what we are looking for. It should never be that way. When you're going to buy a phone, Samsung, whatever phone that you're buying, nobody ever says, give me a list of what you've put inside this phone. Let me see the screen, how much did it cost? Let me see the battery, how much did it cost? Let me see the motherboard. And then you said, okay, then it cost you 10,000 bucks, so I'll pay you 10,100. No, we buy a phone based on the value that we want to derive for it. That's why we pay top dollar for maybe an iPhone compared to the other phone. So I think the way we need to look at our sports is by being able to offer such a compelling property that we don't need to sit down and qualify. Whoever is interested in the property can look at it and say, I need to have this property and I'll pay top dollar for it. And that is exactly what your most successful leagues, your most successful tournaments, your most successful brands, sports brands have done, be able to attract big monies. Again, I talked about differentiating between sports purists and sports fans. This is very key when we are doing our promotions and targeting. How do we classify our properties? Do we have properties that are there purely for the purists that we have to retain in the game and keep there in the game? Are we creating other properties where we can say this is a property for us to attract in new supporters, what we've called sports fans, and bring them into the game?
On to stage Dr. Dan Shikanda, who will be giving us a speech and a session on sports sponsorship and how to run a football club under lean circumstances and under these trying times. Welcome on to stage Dr. Dan Shikanda. They are chairman of AFC Leopards and, of course, recently part of the Football Kenya Federation Premier League Management Committee, which, of course, will be overseeing running of the local league in from the next 10 days or so. Dr. Shikanda, please, I will ask you, if possible, to make your speech a bit more concise, and we will be able to field your questions after the break that will come after Dr. Shikanda's session here. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Maybe I'll take this opportunity to recognize my treasurer. He's in the house. So when we talk where the monies are, of course, with my treasurer, he knows where the money is. So I will be brief, very brief. The challenges we've had at AFC, and maybe from my experience in football, where is the money, maybe what we need to do, and why are we not doing it. AFC Leopards was established in 1964. Most of you are not yet born. In fact, all of you. Maybe I'm the only one who had been born. I was born in 1953. So at least I was there by the time AFC was being established. And if to date you look at what AFC has, I can say maybe we can talk of about maybe a bus. And the previous speakers, especially Auka, spoke of infrastructure. Infrastructure is key to anything you're doing. And without infrastructure, there is no way you will reach where you want to go. So I think what has happened in our football, let me talk about football, not sports per se. What has happened in our football is that there's been nothing. And the first speaker put up a slide where he showed 1 to the power of 365 is 1. 1.01 to the power of 365 came to about 1.01. And that's exactly what is happening in our sports or in our football. When you sit on that seat and you do not try anything or you don't do anything, you will not achieve anything. Being in 1964, there is nothing that will happen. We have a club that has the richmost history. I don't even compare it with the other team because I can say our history, incepted in 1964. Our rivals were incepted in 1968. By the time I was going to play for our rivals, we had more titles as FC than them. Where is the money? For example, FC case study. The money is all here. And this is an infrastructure. If as AFC we go through it, we will never cry again. But Dan Shikanda, as chairman of AFC, I will rely on the tradition, get collection. I will rely on, forget about grants, donation, of course by politicians. That is how the club has been running. Then at the end of the day, I will not manage my debts, I'll not manage my costs. Then I'll not have adequate systems in place to take charge of what is happening. When we talk about money in football, and I'm happy with Auka's presentation, covered a lot of how we can actually bring in this money. Online revenue is key, but if we are not doing anything about it, we will not make any money from online. Get collection will only happen if we have a product. Auka talked about making sure you have a product that will attract. If FC cannot play football and win, and as we speak, my neck is always on the chopping board because you asked by somebody, na unajua mjafunga Gor Mahia for the last 5 years and you expect me to come to the stadium? Of course they will not come. And they will tell even beforehand. So, for us to get the monies, the product must talk for itself. The core business of FC Leopards is to play football. But it can only play football if we have the best of the best. We have to make sure that we invest in the core business so that at the end of the day, when we are talking about where is the money, all these streams will bring in money. What am I talking about? We are in a scenario whereby we are in the 21st century. And as leadership of clubs or as leadership of sports or football in this country, we are still operating like we are in the 18th century. We will not get anywhere if we do not attempt to actually get revenue from here. Women football, for example, FC is a sports club. It's not a football club, it's a sports club. And I'm sure tomorrow, if I start a women's team, I can easily attract sponsorship. I can easily attract sponsorship because it might seem to be an easier target. And if you see what has been happening in our women football, there are some 4 girls who've gone out. And if you see the kind of money they've made, it's definitely telling you that there's something we are missing in our football. Because apart from Wanyama and his brother, if you look at our other players, have not been all that key whereby we can talk of big monies. So when we talk about money in our leagues, in our football, and we are not working on all this, it becomes difficult. And in my case scenario as the FC Leopards, I have actually looked at all these streams and realized the setbacks we have as a team and maybe as a country. And to be honest with you, last year, we ran AFC on no budget whatsoever, because what happened, we had a sponsor who was giving us 57 million in SportsPesa. We were only depending on this revenue stream. But just before we started the league, the team was in pre-season in Mumias. The sponsor moved out. So now you are running a team. Your wage bill is 5.2 million per month. Not per month, per 4 weeks. Because that time I realized 4 weeks is a short time. Because before you wake up, hatujalipwa mshahara. Before you sleep, it is morning. So how can we bring money into football? So if you look at our opportunities, and maybe Trish, can we just have 1 minute to talk about this? We are trying to do something on this. Because we believe without visibility, without technology, we will never go anywhere.
Thank you. Just quickly, I think our focus mainly was on generating money from online platforms. And I can tell you that we've moved our, right now we have 180 connections. We've moved our Twitter following to 93,000 now. Our Facebook following is about 75,000, but with views of over 566,000. Our Instagram now is at 8K views, and YouTube is 4,000. So you can see every day when you wake up in the social media, you'll not miss to find anything about FC Leopards. And we are doing that at very, very minimal engagement, because our media team is not yet at the place where we want it. So we are really focusing on ensuring that and by there I can tell you now, from all those channels, we are generating now small money. We've reached that monetization value for all our channels. So I think this will help us. And as Chairman has said, I think the most important thing is not to depend on one source of income. So you have to look. I think he didn't mention about merchandise. I think merchandise is one of the most important revenue streams, because even for us, the home jerseys that we have now, we have sales of over 3 million now. And you can see, and we're still yet to launch our away jersey and the third kit. The other one is membership. I think for us also, we are focusing on membership. Our target before COVID was to do 10,000 members every year. And you can see at 1,000 shillings, 10,000 members, that is how much? So I think those membership, merchandise, and we are also investing in youth. So we want, FC has been a net spender in the transfer market, but now we want to bring a culture where we are able to sell our players at high value. So I think on mobile revenue, I don't think there's anything more to say. So we are still continuing to ensure that FC is present. Everyone, when you wake up in the morning, you will see FC Leopards, so that we start attracting partners. Recently, we got a partner to do our training our pre-season in Iten is called Galana, and just by mentioning Galana and relating Galana with the AFC, that partner is very happy and wants to partner with the AFC going forward because of social media, because of our fans are very active in social media, and when they get those views in social media, they are happy that their product will be enhanced. So that is the thing we are doing. We are having several partners for everything: water, training, travel, and matches. So thank you.
As I finish, just go back this way. Kidogo tu. Our weakness will always be highlighted by Kina Jeff on a kind note. And we have some serious retrogressive internal politics, which will be picked by the media, and both social and mainstream. We would like to work on our infrastructure. Auka said very well, no club in this country has a stadium, which is important. We are a football team. What business do we have not having a football ground, even for training? So we have invested in that, and we are going towards that. Governance structures are key. Secretariat, we really want to strengthen our secretariat so that everything can happen without Shikanda or the treasurer or the secretary. We are hoping to reach there, but soon we should be there. And then debts. Today you'll hear these players gone, I don't know where. People who worked in 1969, 70, want to be paid what they were not paid before they exit. And we are all having all these things hanging over us. Then lack of assets makes it difficult even to have a conversation with banks. I've seen somebody from the bank investment, something will give us a talk. We'll have a number of questions for him. So all said and done, there is money in football, more so in our club. But if we don't do anything, it will not come. We will not realize that money. And I can urge you in this room, without trying, football is the biggest industry in the world. But the stakeholders do not want to try anything. At the end of the day, we are left fighting the federation, fighting I don't know who, and we end up killing the sport. Let's try. Let's just do something small. I told myself, by the time I exit, maybe after next year, after 3 years, let there be a legacy that Shikanda did A, B, C, D. And I don't want to leave a legacy of a bus because there was a bus before I became chairman. Even winning the league for me is not a legacy. But because that product must attract stakeholders, winning the league will be important. But if we can leave an infrastructure of, let's say, a training ground, an office apartment, I think we'll have gotten something. So in conclusion, there's money. How do we find the money? I return the question to you.
Where is the money? I return the question to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks a lot for that, Dr. Dan Shikanda, Chairman of AFC Leopards, and of course, part of the FKF Premier League Management Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, I want us to ready ourselves for a small break. I'm sure everyone is in need of one. Before we get to that, another interesting point that Mr. Shikanda has raised here to do with the internal politics and sometimes external politics in our sports that affect the players. I've always said it's not that UEFA doesn't have these politics. It's not that Northern Africa doesn't have these politics. When we're looking at the likes of Zamalek and Al Ali fighting over who is the CAF club of the century, you know, and the Mansour Mortadas are throwing insults right, left, and center. It's not to say that they don't have the same issues. The only difference has been that player welfare comes first in those structures, such that by the time internal differences are coming up, the players are well taken care of, the infrastructure is there, the development policies are there. So the minute we learn to put the player first, ensure that everything about the player in the team is catered for, I'm sure there might be time for some of those politics coming up after that. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for your time thus far. Let's take a halftime break. Game ni 90 lakini sai tuko 45. go out for a small beverage break, a small tea break. Let us, purpose to be back in the next 15 minutes so that we can also ensure that the room has been well aerated and we can continue observing measures to do with mitigating COVID-19. See you shortly.